So welcome and thank you for joining me tonight. I do not take it lightly that you have decided to spend your Friday evening with me. It is my sincere hope that you will find this information useful and it will help you to do love and life better. I am your host, Clifton Brantley, and I'm excited about this content. Now, this format is a little different than we normally do, so I won't really answer questions until we get to the end, okay? And also, if you have not already, please do register. Not register, but subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that already. So tonight we're talking about becoming a husband, all right? While this information definitely is relative to men who are not married yet, my intentional target is men who are actually already married. You may be asking, well, why is it called becoming a husband if I'm already married? Well, that's because when you get married, you get the title of husband. But that doesn't mean that you know how to be who you vowed to be. Now, I do plan to do a lesson on becoming a wife also, but tonight I'm going to be talking to the husbands. The reason that I wanted to address the men first is because I do believe that the husband is the foundation of the marriage. Now, while some may disagree with that, and maybe they may tune me out because of that, I'm convinced that whoever this is for, they'll get it. Now, when I say that the husband is the foundation of the family, I am not at all implicating or suggesting that the husband is more important than the wife, or the husband is better than the wife, or the husband is above the wife. As a matter of fact, when you think foundationally, the foundation is at the bottom. So really, if you want to talk about hierarchy, the husband is at the bottom of the family, not at the top, right? And the family or the marriage sits on the husband. But I believe the husband is the foundation of the marriage. So to me, it made sense to talk about, being a husband first. The divorce rate right now is alarming. It's crazy, right? Over 50, maybe even 60% now of marriages end in divorce. The reason that it is alarming is because marriage is the foundation of the family. The family is the foundation of society. And as the family dissolves, our society as a whole weakens. But now to bring it back a little closer, my focus isn't the society. My focus is helping you have better marriages. And so I know that there are women, out here watching and whatever, but my focus tonight is the men. And so, brothers, I really hope that you hear my heart tonight. And not really just my heart, because I'm not so much, and maybe I shouldn't even say it my heart, because I'm not really sharing so much of my opinion, but I'm sharing things that are relative to you being a better husband. But I didn't come up with it, right? I didn't make it up. The issues that you face in your marriage are by and large a result of your life training. What do I mean by that? Well, when we get to the planet, none of us know how to do life here, right? We don't know how to do life on the planet when we first get here. And what you learn about love and life will heavily be determined by who raised you and what happened to you in those first 8 to 10 years of life, okay? Now, I know a lot of people are not aware of how heavily those early experiences in life affect them today, no matter how long ago childhood was. As a matter of fact, I have clients who are in their 60s and they're still trapped by limiting beliefs that they learned in their childhood. And so tonight, I want to address some of those, right? I want to help you change your limiting beliefs so that you can be who you were created to be. Now, when it comes to being a husband, there's only one person on the planet who needs a husband, and that is a wife. The wife is the only one that needs a husband, right? The children don't need a husband, right? The husband doesn't need a husband. The only one who needs a husband is a wife. So that means that you trying to be the kind of husband that you want to be is pointless because you're not your husband. Also, being a husband, let me point this out. Being a husband is not the same as being a man or a father. Okay? A father is for the children. A father is for the children. Being a man is the prerequisite for being a husband or a father. Okay? Now, of course, I'm talking about God's original design, right? We often do things in a way that's not how he designed it, which is why we have so much difficulty in general, okay? But a husband is for the wife only, right? Everything about being a husband is 100% for the wife and 100% learned, right? We're born as males, but becoming a man, becoming a father, becoming a husband is learned. Nothing we're born with equips us to be a husband. And I also want to let me point this out because a lot of times we don't realize that as we get in these roles that we have not been equipped or learned how to do, that's when destruction happens. Right? Destruction happens when we get in these roles that we haven't learned how to do. And so tonight I want to, definitely dive in, becoming a better husband, because when you're a husband, it's not just like any other relationship, right? You have somebody's life literally in your hands, and I'm gonna show you that as we continue, right? I was about 31, and I was 31 with 3 children when I realized that I had to learn how to be a man. Okay. Now, in hindsight, I could have learned. I could have used some instruction on how to be a better father, also. Right. But it's on the. I call it. It's on the job training. Right. But here's the thing. I've been married twice. Yep. I've been married twice, but I don't think I've ever been a husband. At least not in the way that I'm going to share with you guys tonight. All right. I've never really been a husband. In my first marriage, I was 21. All right. I was a kid. All right. I was clueless. I had no idea what I was doing. All right. But now in my second marriage, I was a man. As a matter of fact, I was a good man. But in hindsight, I didn't realize that I did not fully understand what it meant to be a husband. Okay. I didn't realize that everything about being a husband was for her. I didn't know that, and so that's why, the title of my book is, and it's not out yet. So I know some folk are going to say, "Well, where is the book?" It's not out yet. I'm still working on it. But the reason that I named the book that I named it is really for this reason. The name of the book is "I Wish I Had Known." I was clueless. But a lot of times you don't know what you don't know. And so I hope that, through my experience and my failures and my ignorance and then learning can help you avoid some of the same mistakes that as a husband, you don't have to go through. Like, we don't have to go that way. Okay. So how does one become a husband after you've already gotten the title, right? Well, we don't have time, obviously, to go through an exhaustive list of what it means to be a husband and the qualities of a good husband. So the things I'm going to share with you tonight, specifically tonight, are foundational things to hopefully help you do marriage better. All right. Now, as I was preparing for this, for the talk tonight, when I got halfway into it, I knew that I was going to have to do more than one session because it was just too much information. I was trying to fit everything in. And I said, if I do that, some things they won't retain. Some things may not make sense. And so let me do it in sections, right? And so tonight I'm talking about like some foundational things. And tonight may not be as well. I often said it may not be as flowery or as feel good as you may want, but I don't know if any of it is going to be feel good. I'm not really a feel good kind of teacher. I'm more of a give you the truth, and if it's difficult to swallow, just take a little water. But the truth will set you free. At least that's what I hear. So I promise I do have some practical things for you to implement and follow. But like I said, tonight is going to be a little bit more information than it is application. Although you can apply some of these things, but it's going to be a little bit more information. Okay. So first, you have to understand that being a husband, to be a husband, you need to know what the creator of the position intended when he created it. All right? Marriage is not our idea. Marriage is God's idea. All right? And it will operate at peak performance when it is done the way he designed it. God created a husband to be a lover of his wife. Now, please don't minimize what I just said by your limited understanding of what love is. Okay? A husband's number one obligation is to love his wife. What does that mean? Well, let's break it down. Oh, wait. First, before I share about this whole love piece and what that means, there's some things that you need to understand before I get into that. Number one, love is not about you. Okay? Love is not about you. It is about the person that you're loving. Number two, love gives without an expectation of a return. Number three, as humans, we are most healthy emotionally, mentally, and sometimes physically when we love, meaning when we give outwardly. And then number four, when you come to your marriage, your primary role is giving, not receiving. Okay? Now, it's important for you to accept what I just said, or at least, say, I wonder if that's true. I want to know more. All right? Because if you don't accept it, or at least consider it, then you'll miss the important part about love, because your brain will shut off and you won't receive it. Okay? You can keep watching, but you won't receive it because you told your brain that this information is not important, and so then it stops recording. Okay? So at minimum, I want you to stay curious. Right? Make sure you stay curious throughout the whole thing. If you don't agree, at least stay curious. Now, loving your wife as a husband is your number one obligation. Okay? And remember, you vowed to love her and be her husband only. Well, let me say it this way. You vowed to love her and be her husband, and you did not make that vow like if she is whatever, right? You being a husband, here's what I'm trying to say. You being a husband has nothing to do with her being a wife, okay? Don't forget, stay curious, okay? Don't let me lose you. You being a husband has nothing to do with her being a wife. And I'm talking about her walking in the role of a wife, right? If you being a husband is contingent on her being a wife or a certain kind of wife, then you are not in control of you, she is. And that won't be healthy for your marriage, because now you can't perform your role as a husband because you're depending on her to do whatever. And it's crucially important for you to be in control of you. Okay? All right. So now, what does it mean to love your wife? Now, I could give you a lot of examples of what it looks like to love your wife, but for tonight, I'm only going to give you two examples. Okay? I'm just going to give you two examples of what it means to love your wife. Now, remember, marriage is God's idea. It's not man's idea. It is God's idea. He created it. Okay. So now to say, I don't want to hear what God has to say about marriage is like saying, your iPhone malfunction and you saying, I know Apple will fix it for free, but I don't want to hear what they got to say about my phone, even though they created it. Okay. It doesn't make sense, but stay curious. So Now, in the first example, let's look at Adam, the very first husband. Okay, but before God gave Adam a wife, he gave Adam certain instructions. Okay, he gave him certain instructions, and I believe these instructions can be looked at as Adam's training as being a husband, for being a husband. Okay, I really believe that. So first, let's look at this part. So the first thing God did was he created a garden for Adam to be the caretaker of. Okay, Adam didn't create the garden. Okay, that means that the garden was not his garden. It wasn't his garden, right? It wasn't his garden by way of ownership, but it was his garden in regards to responsibility. Okay, in Genesis 2:15, it says that God placed the man in the garden to cultivate it and watch over it. Okay, to cultivate means to foster the growth of. To watch over it means to give it your attention. Okay, so don't miss this. Adam did not plant the garden. He does get to receive the nourishment from the garden, but he is also tasked with cultivating the garden so that it can produce more fruit and vegetables. All right, I like saying vegetables. Let's just say fruit, more fruit. As a husband, one way that you love your wife is by fostering growth in her. Mentally, and sometimes physically, spiritually, right? The way that you foster growth, the way that you cultivate your wife is by fostering growth in her. And then as a husband, you also have to watch over her. What does that mean, to watch over your wife? That means that you're paying attention and making sure that she's always good, right? That's your role. That's a way that you show love to her. You cultivate and you watch over, making sure she's good. Okay, you got to make sure there are no weeds in her life. Make sure there are no weeds in her life. Make sure there are no weeds in your garden so that she can bear much fruit. Right now, the fruit that she produces from your cultivation, you get to enjoy. Yeah, you get to enjoy the fruit that you cultivate, that your wife brings. So if your wife is being disrespectful, and if your wife is being unkind, or if your wife is being in a way that you don't like, the first place you have to look is, as a husband, you got to look at yourself, right? Ask yourself, what did I plant? When you see something in your garden that is not nourishing, then ask yourself, who planted this? Because the truth is, sometimes when you get in the garden, there are things there that you didn't plant, right? Sometimes when you say I do, the garden comes with overgrown weeds, right? But you chose her. You chose her, so you cultivate her, right? That's your job. You chose her. Now, I don't want to go too deep into that on necessarily how to cultivate, right? Because that could be a whole lesson in and of itself. As a matter of fact, I think I'm gonna do that. Not tonight, but I think I'm gonna create a lesson on cultivating your wife. But just know that you need to cultivate her. I'll revisit that at some point, but just know that you need to cultivate your wife. And the reason I need to revisit it, because there are some of you who think that you're already cultivating your wife, but really you're cutting your wife. Yeah. And again, I don't want to go too deep. I was going to say I don't want to offend anybody, but that's not true. I don't really. That's never really a motivation for me, whether I'm going to offend you if I'm speaking truth. Like, I'm not just obviously rude, but to my point, some of you who think that you're cultivating your wife, you're actually cutting her. Okay, so remember I said cultivating means to help her grow, right? To foster growth in her. But some of you try to use a strong hand, like you're trying to make her go back to school. You're trying to make her think differently. You're trying to make her, that's not cultivating, right? That's cutting. And that's why I say I need to go more in depth on that whole process of cultivating versus cutting, because just putting it out there, hey, you need to cultivate your wife to help her grow, that can be misused, right? The knife in the hand of Jason is dangerous. But a knife in the hand of Gordon Ramsay, he can create some beautiful things. You see how I just put that analogy together? I came up with that. That wasn't in my notes. All right. So cultivate and watch over. Now watch this. The next thing that God did was tell Adam, you may freely eat of the tree. You may freely eat the fruit of every tree in the garden, except the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Here's the principle. As a husband, you need to have boundaries and self-discipline. Yeah. A lack of internal boundaries in your life will prevent you from knowing who you are. See, on a psychological level, internal boundaries help you determine what is me and what is not me. Right? Boundaries help you know what you are responsible for and what you're not responsible for. Okay? You're not responsible for your wife's happiness. But as a husband, you are responsible for helping her bear the fruit of happiness. So, and then you come to the self-discipline piece. You have to be self-disciplined. Fellas, don't miss that. Self-discipline is crucial, not just to your marriage, but to your life, right? Self-discipline is probably the most valuable characteristic that a human can have, honestly. I wish growing up that I wish I had grown up in a situation where my early life training had included the teaching on self-discipline. It didn't. So here I am trying to learn self-discipline after 40 because I never knew the real value and importance of it. But trust me when I tell you, self-discipline is crucially important to your life and to your marriage. If you lack self-discipline, I can assure you that you will not do well at loving your wife. Every injury to a wife from a husband will find its root in a lack of self-discipline. I can assure you of that. Okay. And then, so then the last principle that I want to highlight from Adam in this first example is, as a husband, your wife must be your number one priority. Right? Your wife must be your number one priority. Now, watch, I did not say your wife must be your number one priority if she makes you her number one priority. Because remember, you being a husband is not contingent on what she does and who she is. You signed up to be a husband, right? And it's your job. If no one trained you in that, and more than likely they didn't. I've not met a husband in my office yet. I've been doing this depending on when you want to start, 7 to 10 years. Hadn't met a husband yet that knew how to do what they signed up to do, including me. Oh, but in October, I forgot we moved it. Never mind. Erase all of that. So anyway, most of us don't know how to do what we've signed up to do. Okay, so it's your job to learn the training to be a husband so that you can be you, or well, not be you, but be a husband regardless of what she's doing, right? So as a husband, you have to put your wife, she has to be your number one priority, okay? Number one priority. After God presented Adam with Eve, Adam said, "This is now bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh." Okay? Bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. But the picture of how close bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh is actually found in the next verse in 24 when it says, "For this reason." For what reason? Marriage. Okay? For this reason, a man leaves his father and his mother and is joined to his wife, and the two become one flesh. That's pretty close. Okay? The most significant relationship that any human can have when they get to the planet is the parental relationship. But God says that when a man takes a wife, she becomes more important than his most significant relationship, the most significant relationship he's ever had. Okay, that's pretty close. So don't miss the point that when you become a husband, there is no other priority, not even making money. There's no other priority, not even your children. There's no other priority. Can I put some bass in my voice so y'all will recognize that I'm serious? There's no other priority. That's as deep as I can go. There's no other priority as a husband that you will have, make sure that ain't, than your wife. I'm telling you what I know because the text said it. Okay, so your wife has to be your number one priority. And if you're cultivating her as your garden, remember, you got to watch over her. So that's kind of, I guess I would call that double dipping. He's kind of like saying the same thing. Said it first as far as watching over, but then said it again, leave father and mother and cleave to your wife. Don't miss that. She's your number one priority. Okay. Now, let's go to my second example of how to love your wife. And again, remember, I can't give you everything tonight because my notes, they just kind of was like, wow, that's too much. Okay. So I'm giving you the bits and pieces, kind of laying the foundation for where we're going. Okay. And if you don't like the whatever I'm giving you tonight, as far as, it coming from the Bible, it's okay. Well, actually, it's not okay, to be honest with you, because like, where is she going to learn how to be a husband at? The culture? What they going to teach you? And that's probably what you've been doing already. Okay. So that won't work. You're going to go with your family. How'd they teach you how to do marriage? Even if your parents had a great marriage, you weren't in it. So you have no idea how they created that. Okay. So going back to the manufacturer and understanding his intent when he designed it, that's the most effective way to be great at what you've signed up to do. Now, you may not have known that when you said, I'm going to be a husband, that you were signing up to be a giver, not a receiver, but you did. Okay. Now, my second example of how to love your wife comes from Jesus. Now, before you check out, let me help you. Okay. Stay curious. Remember, stay curious. I'm not talking about the God part of Jesus. Okay. I'm not talking about the walking on water and raising the dead part of Jesus. Okay. I'm talking about the man part of Jesus that made the choice. It was a choice to sacrifice his life. Okay. Jesus is the most impactful and influential individual in human history. Now, while Jesus did die physically for us, and yes, you are expected to give your life for your wife if necessary, I really want to highlight the principle of dying to yourself, right? Not physically, but in all the other ways, right? I want you to focus on dying to self. And actually, I almost forgot. So let me give you the text for where this comes from, right? So Paul says, I believe it's Ephesians, he says, husbands, love your wives the way Christ loved the church, and he giving himself up for her, right? Now, when we talked about Adam, we took principles from the creation that I believe are very applicable to marriage. But here, we don't have to do any stretching or reaching or anything. Paul specifically says husbands. So that means he's talking about you. Okay? Husbands, love your wives the way Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. See, here's the thing. Husbands, you guys often want, husbands often want their wives to submit, but then the husband isn't willing to die. Right? You got to die to self. And I don't have a lot of time to go through all of the ways that Christ loved the church or the way that Christ loves us. But if you truly want to be the kind of husband that God wants you to be, because he created it, and if you truly want to love your wife the way that you are designed to love her, then I strongly encourage you to examine the life of Jesus. And as always, I like this disclaimer. I keep putting it in because the world has done such a terrible job at representing God. And I shouldn't say the world, I should say the church. This disclaimer, anytime I'm talking about God, I'm not talking about religion. Okay? Anytime I'm talking about God, I'm not really talking about the church per se. When I say the church, I'm talking about like your local church, where you grew up, and the folk in your church, right? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the God of the universe, and I'm talking about his word, the Bible. God and religion are not the same thing. Don't miss that. Don't forget that. Okay? So when I'm sharing this with you, I'm sharing these principles on which to build your life. I'm never talking about religion. Okay? I'm just talking about God. Specifically, I'm talking about his love and how to love your wife. Okay? Now, Jesus, the way that Jesus treated people was not a supernatural thing, right? And that's why I say when I say loving your wife the way Christ loved the church, I'm not talking about supernatural stuff. Like you're not expected to walk on water. You're not expected to raise Lazarus from the dead. That's not the command when Paul says to love your wife. It's the patience, the forgiveness, the encouragement, the gentleness, the teaching, the care, right? He gave you a model to follow. There's nothing about anything that Jesus did relationally that you can't do. And you may say, well, the reason he was able to do that is because he was emotionally whole. Okay. Are you telling me it's humanly impossible for you to be emotionally whole? It's not. But even if that's your argument, what are you arguing for? What is it that you're lobbying for? What is it that you want to, what excuse are you fighting for? I heard, who was it? Les Brown say the other day, when we argue for our limitations, you get to keep them. Don't do that. Like, don't argue for your limitations, right? Challenge yourself. Become better. Why? Because you can. Now, here's the reason that loving your wife is important. Because without emotional security, your wife will malfunction without fail. Now, most of us as men were raised to be providers. Okay, we're raised to be providers, and that's a good thing. Like, grow up, get a job. You need money, right, in this society to survive. But without emotional security, your money won't matter much to your wife. I'm telling you what I know. Okay, he designed her to thrive off of your love. So as a lover, I strongly encourage you to focus on what you are giving, not what you're getting. Okay, focus on what you're giving, not what you're getting. And this is something that I teach in my office. Like I say, they raise us to be providers. They really raise us to be family-oriented, not marriage-oriented. I don't know if you've ever thought about the difference, but the marriage and the family are not the same thing. Okay, there was this movement a while back, and it may still be around. In the name of it was Family First, and I get the idea, but the family can't come first. The marriage has to come first. It has to. Why? Because the family cannot support the weight of the marriage. It can't. Now, if you focus on the marriage is what supports the weight of the family. Because if the marriage goes away, the whole thing falls apart. Right? It all falls apart. But if the marriage is strong, then the family is okay by default. If you have a strong marriage, the family is going to be okay, meaning the children and everybody else in the house. It's going to be fine. Okay, so that's pretty much what I had tonight. Now, like I said, man, as I was preparing this stuff, the things that I was writing and coming out of me, I actually thought, I'll be honest with you, I thought I was going to go a different way and give you more. I don't even know what to call it. You'll get a lot of what I thought was going to be tonight for next week. But I was just kind of led this way to lay this foundational work. So next week, I'm going to talk about the mindsets and roadblocks that prevent you from doing the things that will cause you to be a great husband. Because there are some barriers to being great, right? Again, if you could just stand in front of a judge or a preacher and some witnesses and say I do and become a husband and then be successful, the divorce rate would not be what it is. And I know I'm saying that and I'm only talking about one side of the marriage, but I'm just convinced. And if you want to convince me otherwise, fine, you can try. But for what? Again, why are you fighting for your limitations? But I'm just convinced that if husbands would get on track, marriage would turn around. Children would turn around. Because again, it's marriage, family, society, right? And so really I could say it this way. Husbands, marriage, family, society. And like I am going to address the women, not next week, because I don't know how many weeks this is going to be with the men. I'll let you know when I'm done, then I'll be done, right? But I'm going to address the women. But right now, brothers, I'm not trying to beat you down. I'm really trying to help you, okay? I'm trying to help you be great for your life. See, here's something that I came across really within the last week as far as how we become healthy as humans. The way God designed us, it is a design, I don't even know what you call it. Because the thing that keeps coming to my head is design flaw, but it's not a flaw that I want to say. So forgive me for being human and having a brain freeze. But basically, it's the way we're designed to be givers. Did you know? I'm talking about science now. I'm not even talking about the Bible. Even though it's in the Bible, I'm talking about science. Scientists say we are more healthy emotionally and mentally when we give, not when we receive. That's why the Bible says it's better to give than receive. But that only is relevant for you if you are healthy and whole. And guess whose job it is to help you to make you healthy and whole? You. Your life is your responsibility. It's not even God's responsibility. He'll work with you to help you become whole, but it's your life is your responsibility. Okay. So, I heard Daniel say something, a couple of weeks ago, or it may have been last week. I don't know, but I want to talk about it next week. I want to expand on it. And here's the thing that he said: your marriage is either sinking, surviving, or thriving. Okay. I'm going to take those three things and kind of help you understand some of the barriers that keep you back from being all that you can be, and some of the things that prevent you from maximizing your marriage. Okay, so thank you guys for joining and for tuning in, and I appreciate you allowing me to speak in your life just for a little while. So I am open to questions.